DFS community, welcome in. This is the Week 18 edition of one of the most accurate DFS shows in the industry. This is episode number 78 of the Adjusted Line Play Report. This is where we take a deep dive into the play in the trenches to determine game script and player outcomes. The show is presented by Zilla Fantasy Elite. I am your host, Todd Hoffman, and you can find myself over on Twitter at ToddZilla1337, and you can find Zilla Fantasy Elite over on Twitter at Zilla Fantasy. All right, folks, this is a Week 18 edition. It comes with a bunch of caveats because there's not going to be all the starters playing. I don't want to get too in-depth into all the potential pieces. Just know that things are changing as new news comes out. Who's going to play for how long, who's not playing, all of that. Already since the start of the week on like Monday nights, some of these lines have moved astronomically. I think the Vikings and the Detroit game started at 52 points. Is upwards of 58 points for the game total in some places. Actually, on the screen here, we have the best game from Saturday night, but the Baltimore game here, I believe this started at like a 13-point favorite for Baltimore. Now it's moved an entire touchdown up to minus 20. So these lines are moving like crazy. Week 18 is absolutely nuts. So really all I'm going to do in this particular show, maybe not suggest people, but I'm just going to get into each matchup based off of what it was like with the starters in there. Take that with a big grain of salt and use it to your advantage of who's playing, who's not playing, and what you might be able to expect for that particular player, you know, whether they're new or an old vet in that lineup. So that's how we're going to attack it this week, and hopefully you can go out there and win some money in Week 18 DFS. For those of you who are starting your championship games, I feel sorry for you because there's a lot of players that are out, and this is another reason why the last week of the NFL season should not be the one that is deciding your fantasy football championship. So keep that in mind. For those of you who might not necessarily follow me in the off season, you might want to start doing that. It's very beneficial. I have some machine learning models that I created legit in Python, wrote the code to use huge database of all the player information of when they're coming out from college, all of their athletic profile, their testing at the combine, how big they were, all the physical attributes, all of that stuff, some of their college stats, and then taking that for the rookies coming in. That's what I do. And then for first, second, third, and fourth year tight ends and wide receivers, I basically spit out what they should be doing in the next fantasy season. And that's taking into account all of their previous NFL experience too. So let's just say Marvin Harrison Jr. going into his second year. Once this week finishes up, we'll input and update all of those spreadsheets. I'll start running that stuff in the off season here. We should know even before the Super Bowl comes, you know, what players we can maybe target in dynasty leagues that will maybe break out that other people might not be expecting, and we'll go from there. But yeah, it's always a fun off-season adventure to update some of those models in spreadsheets and databases so we can kind of get a little bit more accurate picture for all of the people that come along in the future. Anyway, with that being said, let's get the Adjusted Line Play Report underway. Absolutely going to be a crazy one here. We have a 16-game slate that I got to get over, but again, I'm not going to go too in-depth into each one of these. I'm just going to highlight Vegas game totals and then kind of look at what the protections were throughout the season. And it becomes a little bit more relevant once we start doing the playoff stuff. So I'm going to maintain all of this stuff through the Super Bowl, really dive deep into the prop betting stuff once you get down to like the NFC and AFC championship and which of those look good for some of these players based off of these matchups, because then you get the starters back in there and these make a little bit more sense than what they might otherwise be here for Week 18. So all right, with that being said, we're going to start with the Saturday slate. So there's 2 games on the Saturday slate. Not a ton of stuff involved with these, but playoff real football implications. Pittsburgh actually going in Saturday night, and then I showed you the Baltimore game there Saturday afternoon. Should Baltimore lose this game against Cleveland somehow, despite being 20-point home favorites, Pittsburgh then, if they beat Cincinnati, would have an opportunity to actually win the division and get a home playoff game to start the season. So that's all that's going into effect here for the Saturday slates. First game here is a 48-point Vegas game total. Cincinnati heading into Pittsburgh. We have Cincinnati as 2-point road favorites. That is giving Cincinnati a 25-point team implied total, Pittsburgh at 23. Pass protection is pretty even there. I think Joe Burrow is going to be playing in this particular matchup, but expect him, based off of this, to have an okay amount of time to throw. The pass DVOA is in the favor of Cincinnati here, so if they got their starters in, they should be all right against this Pittsburgh defense. The run blocking, though, is a little bit more in favor of Pittsburgh's side. Cincinnati isn't sure if Chase Brown's going to play with his ankle. Just keep an eye on that. On the Pittsburgh side, they're 24th in pass protection, but Cincinnati really bad in the pass rush category, 30th. So I'd expect Pittsburgh to be able to have time to throw if they do play their starters. Going into the playoffs, they should perform all right there in terms of having some time to throw. And then the pass DVOA, Cincinnati 26, Pittsburgh 16. That is in the favor of Pittsburgh. Again, I would expect them. When their starters are in there, they're probably planning to have the starters play at least the first half or something, depending on the outcome of that Baltimore game, but they should be pretty good there. And then the run game, surprisingly, Pittsburgh middle of the pack there at 16 across the board. Cincinnati's been pretty poor in that category, 19 and 27. I expect Pittsburgh to be able to have some success on the ground. Kind of based off of this matchup, the Vegas line and kind of what we got going on. Cincinnati not playing for anything. Pittsburgh is. If Pittsburgh is actually playing for the the actual division here, and Baltimore loses this, I think Pittsburgh can actually pull this game out based off of what we see here, but I don't really have much else to add on top of that. Now, Saturday afternoon slate, we have Cleveland heading into Baltimore. As I had mentioned, this is a 20-point home favorite here for Baltimore. Baltimore does have to win the game in order to outright make sure that they win the division, so they will have their starters playing. Cleveland not playing for anything other than a better draft position, so they're more incentivized to lose. We go from a 48 Vegas game total to a 41.5 Vegas game total. And keep in mind, I think the Vegas game total here at 48, you're probably better betting the under on this. Cincinnati does have an outside chance to actually make the playoffs. So if Denver loses and Miami loses and Cincinnati wins, Cincinnati does make the playoffs, which is why Cincinnati is currently favored in this game. They do actually have a chance to make the playoffs should that happen, especially if Baltimore wins this. Pittsburgh going to have less incentive to actually play, and then Cincinnati is going to actually have to play to win no matter what in this game because they're not going to know the outcomes of these other games. So Cincinnati will be playing their starters there. Just keep that in mind. Cleveland incentivized not to score points with this 20-point Vegas line and a 41.5 Vegas game total. Cleveland all the way down at 10.75. Sounds like Bailey Zappi is planning to start there, just an FYI, but they're going to play both Zappi and Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Baltimore incentivized to play their starters until the game is out of hand. A 31-point team implied total, almost at 30.75. Cleveland right across the board on their offensive categories. Baltimore almost top 10 in basically everything. So expect Baltimore's defense to be able to dominate Cleveland's offense. Outside of the backups basically being in there for Cleveland, even if they weren't, it looks like they'd be getting dominated. Obviously, Baltimore should be pretty good in this department on Saturday. So on the Baltimore side, they're green across the board on offense. One of historical offenses, actually, in terms of efficiency and all that. Lamar having a crazy year. I think only one other quarterback season has had a better quarterback rating than him currently, so keep that in mind. But Cleveland, very good in the pass rush if they play their starters. But the pass DVOA is really poor there, so Baltimore should have some pretty explosive plays against this defense while their starters are in. And then stopping the run, Cleveland number 1 actually in that category. But run DVOA, Cleveland 14, Baltimore number 1. Baltimore shouldn't have an issue running the ball. The DVOA does include quarterback running. This category over here does not include quarterback running. So Cleveland a little bit better at the run itself than overall run DVOA. Getting into the number 1 game on the Sunday slate. So the entire Sunday slate on FanDuel is one big slate. It's 14 total games, so just keep that in mind. The hammer comes late in this particular slate, the very last one, Sunday Night Football. We have Minnesota and Detroit. So Minnesota heading into Detroit. It's got a 56.5 Vegas game total. Absolutely astronomical total here. Just in general, if any game is over 50 in the Vegas game total, I think the unders hit that at almost like a 60% clip, which is in terms of betting, if you hit 60% of your bets, you are a god. Just keep that in mind with this Vegas game total here. Most likely going to want to bet the under. Just getting into it. So the 56.5 Vegas game total. Detroit at home are 3-point home favorites. So they're getting the standard home bump. They're saying these teams are otherwise evenly matched. This gives Detroit a 29.75 team implied total, which is number 1 on this main slate for Sunday. Minnesota at 26.75 is the 4th best on this slate. Again, that's out of 28 total teams. So doing very good there. Getting into the Minnesota side, they should have some time to throw the ball. They're pretty good at taking sacks in general, but Detroit has really plummeted in terms of generating sacks now, so expect Minnesota to have time to throw the ball. Pass DVOA, Minnesota number 9, Detroit number 5. They have lost lots of people on defense. This number 5 is probably a little bit more inflated, so Minnesota is probably a little bit better in this category than Detroit, but this is a season-long number, which has been dropping. They previously were number 1, I believe, in the past DVOA for a while, but with all their injuries, they just can't sustain that. Detroit's run defense also was like top 2 for most of the season in these categories, but now with all of their defensive line and linebacker issues, they've been dropping here, probably outside of the top 10 in the run DVOA, potentially after this game. So just based off of this, pretty even matchup in the pass game with time to throw. Probably a studs eat scenario. I'd expect Justin Jefferson to have a pretty good game in this. Addison is proving to be really good this year as well. Hawkinson is pretty solid, so the pass game should be okay. The run game on paper looks a little worse or a little below average. So I wouldn't expect Aaron Jones to do much on the ground, but in the pass game, I think Minnesota's going to be all right, and that's probably going to be how they move the ball. It's going to be good for Sam Darnold. Might see him with another 3-touchdown game and about 300 yards in this, especially if Detroit's putting up points. On the Detroit side, offensive pass protection, number 9. Minnesota number 17, so expect Detroit to have some time to throw the ball. The pass DVOA, Minnesota number 1, Detroit number 6. They're probably going to find it a little bit more difficult, even with time, to move that ball super effectively. The reason that Minnesota gives up so many points fantasy-wise is a lot of that comes in garbage time, which I don't think affects this DVOA as much because that's taking into account the situation that these stats happen in. But you might see some fantasy points come in at the end. Otherwise, if it's a close back and forth affair, I think Minnesota's defense actually kind of holds Detroit's offense at bay a little bit and doesn't give up a lot of those fantasy points. Just keep that in mind. Detroit's run blocking side, they're number 1 and number 2 in those categories yet. Minnesota number 14 in stopping the run, number 3 in the run DVOA. Again, based off of DVOA, it's a studs eat scenario. Gibbs is pretty good in that department. He might be able to overcome the personnel matchup, otherwise being pretty even. Both of these teams are trying to secure the number 1 seed in the NFC. It is the rights to the NFC North. Detroit wins, they're number 1 seed, and will get a bye in week 1. If Minnesota wins, they will get a bye in week 1 and will be the number 1 seed. The winner takes all, essentially. In the event of a tie, Detroit will take the championship and the bye. loser, or if there's a tie, Minnesota will end up being 5th. Detroit will end up being 5th seed with 14 wins, no matter whoever loses or ties here. A 14-win team will end up being the 5 seed this year in the NFC. All right, we got the number 2 game on the slate, Carolina in Atlanta. Heading over to Atlanta. Atlanta's got an outside shot of making the playoffs. Should the Bucks lose and the Falcons win, the Falcons will win the division and host a team, either the Lions or the Vikings, and it'll be in their home arena. And good luck to them, because those two teams probably will dominate them at home, embarrassing them. Anyway, based on this game, it's a 48 Vegas game total, pretty healthy there. Number 2 on the slate, 8-point home favorites here for Atlanta, giving them a 28 team implied total, 3rd best on the main slate. Carolina at 20 is the 14th out of 28 teams. Pass protection-wise, Carolina should have time to throw. Atlanta has been bad in that department. Carolina pretty poor in the pass DVOA, but Atlanta is also bad there. So expect Carolina to be able to move the ball pretty well, passing it, because they're going to have time to throw. And the DVOA is going to make it a little bit easier than they've otherwise had it this season. Run blocking looks very good for Carolina, number 5 in run blocking. Atlanta 20th, run DVOA for Carolina, number 15, Atlanta 22. Honestly, don't know who the running back is here, but they're going to be in a good spot. It might be Raheem Blackshear. I'm assuming that's who it is. I don't know who backed him up. Mike Boone, I believe, is there. But pass game should be effective. Run game should be fairly effective here for Carolina. On the Atlanta side, plenty of time to throw and a very good pass DVOA here. They should be very, very effective throwing the ball. Expect Michael Penix to ball out. It's the last game of the season. They do need to win. So they're going to ultimately take that into consideration. But if they're up big in this, they're probably going to let Penix cook and see what he can do heading into next season. The run stopping, though, Carolina dead last at 32. Atlanta green across the board in the run categories at number 10 and number 6. Bijan Robinson should absolutely dominate in this particular game on the ground. I don't know about him getting a ton of work in the pass game, because it looks like they're not going to need to get the ball out quick. But pass game should go to whoever they want to design the pass plays for, which is probably ultimately not Bijan Robinson. So I expect like London and Mooney and Pitts to have pretty solid weeks here, and then Bijan being very effective on the ground, but maybe being left out of that pass game a little bit on Sunday. All right, we've got 2 games tied for 3rd on this main slate. It's at 44 already. Washington heading into Dallas. Washington are 6.5-point road favorites here, because Washington does have something to play for. It's some playoff seeding. I haven't heard in terms of what they're planning to do. But with that 44 Vegas game total and the Vegas line, Washington at 25.25 is the 6th best team implied total on the slate. Dallas at 18.75 is 20th out of 28. Pass protection-wise, Dallas should be able to get after Washington. They're going to need to get the ball out a little bit quicker, and could lead to some additional runs there by the quarterback as he's getting pressured. Pass DVOA, though, a plus 10 for Washington on offense, which is pretty solid, 8 versus 18. I'd expect Terry McLaurin to be able to have a solid week here. Olamide Zaccheaus has been very good. Zach Ertz has also been all right down the stretch here recently. The run game is more where it's at. Washington pretty poor in the run blocking at 20th, but the run DVOA is number 8. That includes the quarterback, so that's probably part of the reason why there's a big discrepancy there. Dallas 29 and 29 in stopping the run. I'd expect Washington's offense to be pretty successful here, but they will need to get the ball out quicker. Again, that could be a little bit better for Zach Ertz as well with some of those quicker routes. Olamide Zaccheaus, I believe, is more of a slot receiver as well, so expect those two to get heavily involved when they do pass. Dallas side, they're 7th in offensive pass protection, Washington 11. Pretty even there. The pass DVOA, 23 for Dallas, 20 for Washington, pretty even there. Don't really know who to tell you to target in this. Ferguson, Cook, and Tolbert are the only 3 options for the most part, and then any running back targets like Dowdle. Speaking of the run game, Washington bad across the board, 23rd and 26th, both red. Dallas 13 and 21 in those run categories, so slight favor here of Dallas, or a pretty big favor in that regard. So expect Dowdle to be able to run the ball if he's in there. Dallas does play pretty fast, so just keep that in mind. They may otherwise push the pace in this, and if Washington's playing their starters, this could be more of a back and forth affair, with Dallas kind of being able to move the ball in the run game and then being otherwise okay in the pass game. And the other game tied for third on the main slate is Jacksonville heading into Indianapolis. Indianapolis out of the playoff hunt here. Jacksonville trying to play for better playoff positioning, but that doesn't really affect the players all that much. Could affect the coaches and their decisions that they make in terms of trying to lose the game. But Vegas game total line here, Indianapolis 5-point home favorites. That gives them a 24.5 team implied total. 8th best on the slate. Jacksonville at 19.5 is the 16th best out of 28 teams on that main slate. Jacksonville should have plenty of time to throw. Indianapolis not generating any pressure. DVOA-wise, Jacksonville is an above-average matchup there, slightly above average. Indianapolis has been bad in that department. With time to throw and a DVOA that's pretty good, that's probably good news for Brian Thomas Jr. I'd expect him, if he is out there and playing, to have a pretty big week and be able to become one of those players. I think Randy Moss, Odell Beckham Jr., and Jamar Chase are the only rookie wide receivers to hit 1,200 yards and 10 touchdowns in their rookie season. If Brian Thomas Jr. gets 21, he will become the 4th to do that, so pretty good company there for him. And then the run blocking is pretty even up here, 15, like a +3 on the run blocking for the offense and a -5 for the run DVOA on offense for Jacksonville. So nothing to write home about. Etienne and Bigsby probably splitting carries there. Indianapolis side should have plenty of time to throw, should be pretty successful when they do throw it because they're +10 in the DVOA category. Should have a lot of time to throw, which is good. I don't know who's going to be back there at quarterback. Could be Richardson, could be Flacco. More interested in the pass catchers if Flacco's back there. Otherwise, Alec Pierce maybe, or some of these downfield guys if Richardson's in there would be a little bit more interesting. And then the flip-flop on the running side, Indianapolis 31st in run blocking, Jacksonville 22. That's a +9 for the defense, but then in the run DVOA, it's a +11 for the offense. So to keep that in mind, both teams do play very quick. Number 5, number 3, and then number 3 and number 1 in their pace of play. So they do play quick. If you want to throw up maybe and not feel great, you can start their defenses. They might get quite a few opportunities to actually generate sacks or turnovers, things like that with so many plays being ran. All right, 5th best game on the main slate is New Orleans heading into Tampa Bay. This is up there because Tampa Bay does need to secure their playoff spot by beating New Orleans. If they win, they are in. If they lose, they're going to need Atlanta to lose in their game against Carolina in order to make the playoffs. But as it stands, 43.5 Vegas game total, 5th best on the main slate. 13.5-point home favorites for Tampa Bay because they have something to play for, and they are way better than New Orleans, who really has nothing to play for. The 28.5 team implied total for Tampa Bay is the 2nd best on the main slate. New Orleans at 15 is the 27th best on the main slate. Believe it or not, there is a worse team than 15 points. On that 15 points, it looks like a standard day at the office in terms of taking sacks. New Orleans slightly below average matchup there. Pass DVOA slightly below average. Tampa Bay does give it up in the pass game. Expect that to be how New Orleans moves the ball because their run game is pretty poor, and Tampa Bay's has been really good lately and now inside the top 10 for both categories at number 8. New Orleans on offense, 21st and 12th. There are 15 points. I don't even know who the heck's going to be playing for them. It's been a wild season for them, but probably not scoring points. Tampa Bay should be able to score plenty of points, especially in the run game here. Number 2 versus number 31, and then number 7 versus number 31. Doesn't get much better than that. In the run game, I'd expect Bucky Irving and Rachaad White and whoever else receives any touches in that Tampa Bay backfield to be very successful in that regard. They should have some time to throw. Tampa Bay, middle of the pack. New Orleans at 23 is in the red category, so a bottom 10 team in generating sacks. Tampa Bay, number 7 in pass DVOA. New Orleans, middle of the pack at number 14. So expect Tampa Bay to be able to move the ball very effectively. They will be running it like crazy probably and being successful there. And the pass game should also be successful. All right, and the 6th best game total on this main slate, San Francisco heading into Arizona. It's a 42.5 Vegas game total. 4.5 point home favorites for Arizona. That gives them a 23.5 team implied total, 9th best out of 28 teams. San Francisco at 19 is the 17th best out of these 28 teams. Pretty even matchup in the pass protection category. Expect that to be otherwise normal. It sounds like the pastronaut, Josh Dobbs, is going to start for San Francisco. Pass DVOA for San Francisco, number 5 on the season. Arizona at 19, pretty big favor there for San Francisco. They should be all right throwing the ball. Running the ball in the run blocking category, plus 10 on offense, plus 4 in the run DVOA categories. They should be just fine running the ball as well. Arizona really just a middle of the pack defense across the board. San Francisco has some pretty good studs there to make that a little bit of a mismatch on offense. Arizona side, same thing with the sacks there. Otherwise, not getting a ton of sacks or taking a ton of sacks. They're number 12. San Francisco number 12. Pass DVOA though, San Francisco number 4. Arizona 13. So it's a -9 on offense, unfortunately, for Arizona. So despite having maybe some standard day at the office type stuff for throwing the ball, doesn't look like they're going to be super successful against this San Francisco defense. The run blocking, though, is where it's at. Arizona, number 6 and 9. San Francisco, 21st and 25th. Who's ever running back for the Arizona Cardinals is going to feast. If it is James Conner, I'd expect him to have a very solid game. If he is out, and I believe we have Benson on IR, so not even available to play, we're probably looking at a very good game from Michael Carter against the San Francisco team, especially if you think they're going to be under a little duress in the pass game. He's an excellent pass catcher there. Just keep that in mind. All right, 7th best game on this main slate is already down at 41.5. It's a 4.5 point road favorite line for the Chargers heading into Las Vegas. That gives the Chargers a 23 team implied total, 10th best on the slate out of 28 teams. Vegas at 18.5 is the 21st best. Chargers, 23rd in pass protection, Vegas 18. Slight favor there for Las Vegas, but maybe the Chargers have a little more time than they're used to throw the ball. Pass DVOA for the Chargers is number 10. Vegas 15, slight favor there for the Chargers. They should be okay passing the ball in this particular matchup. The run blocking, Chargers number 25 and 19 in the run DVOA. Vegas number 10 and then number 19 in the run DVOA. Otherwise, pretty evenly done matchup here on offense and defense. In those scenarios, expect the studs to eat or be the ones moving the ball for the Chargers. If they are playing any starters, I don't know if that's the case in this matchup or not. Just pay attention to that. In the Vegas side, 22 in pass protection, Chargers number 4. I'd expect the Vegas Raiders to have to get the ball out very quick and otherwise not be very effective getting the ball to some of their deep threats in this particular matchup. Pass DVOA, even a bigger mismatch. Chargers number 7, Vegas number 29. I'd really expect that pass game to struggle, and getting the ball out quick is going to be the name of the game. Run game might be a little bit more effective. Vegas 30th and 31st. Chargers are 27th and 17th. That is the better of the two matchups, but still gross. I do like Chargers being able to handle business here. Just looks like Vegas isn't very good, and I don't think either of these teams necessarily has much to play for. Chargers already in the playoffs, and I don't think can change their positioning too much with wins or losses here. All right, 8th best game total on the main slate. Chicago heading into Green Bay. Green Bay 10-point home favorites. It is a 41 Vegas game total, as I said. So Green Bay at 25.5 for their team implied total is the 5th best on the main slate out of 28 teams. Chicago at 15.5 is the 26th ranked team. Chicago, as you can see, red across the board on offense. Green Bay almost green across the board on defense. Chicago will have difficulties running the ball like crazy in this matchup. In the pass game, they're going to need to get the ball out a little bit quicker than they'd otherwise want, and then their pass DVOA is not very good. Based off of this, on paper, if Green Bay is playing a bunch of their starters, Chicago should have a big difficulty moving the ball on offense in this. If they got some of their backups in, maybe we could see Chicago have a pretty solid game, but just keep that in mind. Green Bay is green across the board on offense. Chicago slowly getting worse and worse on the season in the pass categories. They're now 21st and 17th after being pretty deep into the top 10 through the first month or so of the week or the season. They've just gone downhill basically since then, and their run game has been bad all season. They're 30th and 30th, Green Bay 9th and 4th. I expect Green Bay to be very effective on offense and Chicago to be very ineffective on offense based off of this matchup. All right, 9th best game total on the main slate. Kansas City heading into Denver. Big playoff implications here. Denver wins and they are in the playoffs. Kansas City has absolutely nothing to play for. They have already locked up the number 1 seed and the bye. They have stated as much that they will be playing a bunch of their backups in this game against Denver. So Denver, with that information, are now 10.5-point home favorites with a 40 Vegas game total, giving them a 25.25 team implied total. Kansas City actually dead last at 14.75. They are the 28th ranked team out of 28 teams in terms of scoring points this week. They will have Carson Wentz in the backup QB position. In terms of backup quarterbacks, he's probably got one of the highest ceilings in the game. Just keep that in mind, but you're going to have a lot of backups on offense and defense here for him to throw to. In terms of what the matchup looks like on offense, pretty bad. So it's a -10 in the pass protection, and it's a -5 there in the pass DVOA for offense. Denver should be all right even with the starters in there to kind of put the clamps on Kansas City. And then the run game, Denver number 4, number 2, Kansas City number 14, and number 10. So yeah, Denver green across the board on defense, and Kansas City kind of just hovering outside of the top 10 in most of those categories, kind of middle of the pack, in between, middle of the pack and above average for a lot of their stuff. And now that they have backups in, probably a slightly worse offense than what you're used to. On the Denver side, they should not get sacked all that often. Kansas City doesn't generate a ton of sacks to begin with, and Nix is pretty mobile, and they get the ball out of his hands pretty quick, so he's not taking a lot of sacks. On paper, the pass DVOA is a heavy favor for Kansas City on defense, +11 for the defense there. Denver might otherwise struggle if these were starters, but they're not, so they might find it easier than usual to throw the ball here. And then in the run game, Kansas City's been pretty good in that department, despite these numbers being 15th and 9th on defense. Denver 12th and 23rd in running the ball. They just haven't been very effective running the ball at all this season. It hasn't been their forte. If they're going to move the ball, it's probably going to be in the air. Based off of this and what I see on paper, it's probably going to be a closer than a 10.5-point game. I think those backups from Kansas City are all, they get some fairly decent playing time on offense there. They kind of rotate a lot of those guys, so I don't know if they're going to lose much on offense between Mahomes and Wentz and some of these wide receivers that are already playing a decent portion of snaps. Denver doesn't look like on paper that should be super great, but if they're playing against Kansas City backups, could be a different story. All right, another game with playoff implications at number 10 on the main slate. Miami heading into New York Jets. We do have Miami as 1-point road favorites here on that 39 Vegas game total. That gives them a team implied total of 20, 14th best. Jets at 19 is the 17th best on the main slate. Could be last game for Aaron Rodgers. Miami trying to play for that final playoff position. Should we see, Denver lose to the Kansas City Chiefs and Miami wins against the Jets, the Miami Dolphins will be in the playoffs. Pass protection for Miami 19, Jets 13. Slight favor there for the defense. Pass DVOA Miami 17, the Jets 28th. Big favor there for the Miami offense. Tua is injured. He didn't play last week in a must-win situation. He's kind of questionable and truly like 50-50 for this particular game, it sounds like. Just keep that in mind with some of these numbers and pay attention to that if you're planning on starting any of these guys in DFS. And I don't know what the weather is going to be like in New York, but pay attention to that as well. Jets pretty bad in the run categories on defense, 25th and 23rd. Miami has been really bad, though, in that category this season at 32 and 30. If Miami's going to move the ball, probably going to be via the air, especially if Tua is there and available. The Jets shouldn't have any issue with time to throw the ball against this Miami defense. They're not actually generating a ton of sacks. I think they're a little bit better at pressuring the quarterback than they are actually getting sacks, but just keep that in mind. Pass DVOA, slight favor for the Miami defense at +5, basically, so 16 versus 21. I don't know what to say about Rodgers' potential last game as an NFL quarterback, but it doesn't look like a phenomenal matchup. He just should have some time to throw against this Miami team. And then the run blocking, pretty even here, 16 on defense, 18 on offense. And then run DVOA, Miami 21 on defense, the Jets 28th. Otherwise, looks like a poor opportunity here for the Jets to score a bunch of points. Same with Miami. The best bet is them on the pass DVOA. If Tua doesn't play, then I don't know what to tell you. It could be a pretty ugly matchup here between Miami and the Jets. Both Miami and Denver playing in the late game, so they will not know the outcome before they hop into these games. So Miami are going to be playing their starters. Regardless, based off of this, I do expect Miami to be a little bit better. But if Tua's not in there, they're probably going to be pretty bad. And this game probably doesn't even hit 39 points based off of what I see here. Another one of the late games here is number 11 out of 14 on this main slate at 38.5. We have Seattle as 6.5-point road favorites, actually. Seattle with nothing to play for. But the Rams also stated that they will not be playing any of their starters. Everybody will be sitting in this to give them a day of rest. So Seattle, who knows what they're doing, but they must be playing some of their starters for this Vegas line to be that big. But yeah, with that 6.5-point favorite for them on the road, that gives them 22.5 for their team implied total, 11th best. Rams at 16th or 25th best out of those 28 teams. Pretty even matchup in the pass game. Seattle 26, Rams 22. Pass DVOA 19 for Seattle, 21 for the Rams. Keep in mind they're going to have backups in here, so they're probably going to be even worse on defense. Run blocking is also very even. Seattle 27, Rams 24. Run DVOA, Seattle 22, Rams 20th. Keep in mind they're going to have backups in there as well. Seattle looks like they might have starters based off of this Vegas line. On the Rams side, for offense, 6 in pass protection. Seattle 6 in the pass rush. I'd expect that to continue, especially if the Rams are starting very few starters. Seattle's defense looks like it could dominate in that regard. Pass DVOA, Seattle number 8 on defense, Rams 12. And that's with all of their good wide receivers who aren't going to be in this game. So I'd expect Seattle's defense to actually perform pretty well here. Stopping the run, the Rams number 8 and number 11. If Blake Corum's playing, I'd expect him to have a pretty good game against this Seattle team, especially if they're trying to get the ball out quick. And he could see himself with a monster game. Just keep that in mind for some DFS tournaments. I do like Blake Corum in this if he's going to be playing. Looks like a pretty good spot for him. All right, and we're getting to the last 3 matchups here in the regular season. Early game here, Buffalo heading into New England. It's a 38-point Vegas game total. Buffalo favored by 2.5 points. It gives them a 20.25 team implied total as the favorite in this game. That's the 12th best on the main slate. New England at 17.75 is 22nd. I don't know if Buffalo is playing any of their starters or not, but all of the matchups are red-green matchups. Buffalo 1, 2, 3, 4 on offense. New England 31, 31, 28, 28. So number 1 and number 2 for the pass categories, number 4 and number 3 for the run categories for Buffalo. Should on paper, in theory, be absolutely dominant on offense versus this New England team. Weather can always play an effect, so keep an eye on that. New England side, red across the board on offense, red across the board on defense. Bad team. Maybe that Mr. Mayo gets canned and sent elsewhere after the season. With all of these red matchups, Buffalo 19 and 12 in the pass category. That's the best of the scenarios for New England because Buffalo's run stopping is number 7 and number 7. So keep an eye on that. Sounds like they're not sure if Drake May is going to play in this game. Keep an eye on that as well, but probably avoiding some of these players in DFS. I'm assuming Buffalo isn't playing any of their starters, or they're going to rest some of their starters after a couple of drives, and that's maybe why this Vegas line is a little bit closer than you'd probably otherwise expect. All right, now one of these lines that swung super violently this week is the 13th ranked out of 14 games, the Giants heading into Philadelphia. Didn't have word really what Philadelphia would be doing in this going into the season, or going into Monday night game as well. So now that it's kind of been settled, Philadelphia is resting their starters, and we've seen this Vegas game total drop by almost like 7 points. I believe it was like a 43, and now it's 37.5 as of Thursday night. Philadelphia is still favored by 3 points in this, giving them a 20.25 team implied total, 12th best. Giants at 17.25, 24th best. Giants pretty bad on offense, 20th and 27 in the pass categories. Philadelphia 8 and 3. Again, that's with their starters. Not sure what that situation is, but not very good here on offense for them. But we did see Drew Lock absolutely dominate last week. Certainly possible if they're playing Philadelphia's backups that he does well again. Again, that's also if they're playing their starters, namely Malik Neighbors. Otherwise, some of those guys you can probably forget about Wan'Dale Robinson and Slayton. They don't otherwise have those big monster games anymore in their careers. Run blocking wise, Giants 22nd and 26th, Philadelphia 13th and 1st. Don't expect the run game to be very good either. Just keep in mind Philadelphia might not be playing starters. On offense, Giants have been pretty good at getting after the quarterback. They're top 3 at number 3. Philadelphia has been taking a lot of sacks, so keep in mind that is a possibility. Pickett and Tanner McKee, I believe, are their 2 backups there who will be playing in this game. And then the pass DVOA, Philadelphia 14, Giants 30th. Don't know what that's going to be like with their backups, but expect Johnny Wilson and company to get involved there in the pass game. On the run category, they are sitting Barkley, so Gainwell going to get most of the action there. He should be okay in this matchup. The run blocking, run stopping is a +7 for the defense, but a -10 for the defense in the run DVOA category, so that's that. And the stinker of the week is Houston heading into Tennessee at a 36.5 point Vegas game total, 14th best on the main slate out of 14 games. The Vegas line is close though, 1.5 point home favorites for Tennessee over Houston. Unsure of what Houston's plans are, but I'm assuming they're going to sit some of their starters because I don't think they have a ton of movement here that they can do in a win or loss scenario. So the 19 points for Tennessee is the 17th best on the main slate and probably the worst favorite on the main slate. And then Houston at 17.5 is 23rd ranked out of 28 teams. Houston, somehow a playoff team, already locked it up, are red across the board on offense. keep that in mind. That's shocking after last season. One of the biggest turnarounds here. Absolutely bad on offense. Red across the board. Tennessee, 14th, 22nd, 3rd, and 16th. On paper, at least, should be able to handle this Houston offense. The Houston defense, though, because this is all red, this is all green. That's probably why they're a playoff team. So Houston, number 2, number 2, number 2, and number 5 in all of these categories. Tennessee is right across the board at 29, 31, 23, and 24. Based off of this, the defense should be able to handle both offenses and both sides of the ball. I don't like this even hitting the 36.5 Vegas game total. I'd be fine betting the under on this. Yeah, looking otherwise bad unless you got a bunch of backups somewhere in here that could play an effect. But really, really looking poor on paper for these two teams. All right. As a quick and dirty one, obviously week 18 gets a little bonkers with all of the 4th string, 5th string players in there, backup, guards and tackles and defensive ends and all of that stuff. So hard to predict who's going to be in for how long, what are they looking for next season? Are they just trying to get some people on tape to see, if they want to keep them on the team throughout next year? All these sorts of weird things, playoff bonuses, or not playoff bonuses, but like performance bonuses, things like that go into play in week 18 in terms of who's getting the ball and why. So very difficult to predict, but hopefully this gives you a little bit of information on how to better attack any DFS lineups that you're making. Hopefully you had a good season with us on the Adjusted Line Play report here for Zilla Fantasy Elite. That's what we're really here for, is to go out there, give you this info so you can make better start-sit decisions, make better DFS lineups, and better prop bet decisions when you're going out there and try to grow that bankroll. That's our job here, is to get you some additional info for you to make those decisions. Anyway, it's been a pleasure serving you this regular season. This will go into the playoffs, so pay attention for the next 5 or 6 weeks here. We'll be going through the Super Bowl, and then also be paying attention to some of the off-season stuff, as that will start after the week 18 ends here. I can update all those spreadsheets and start running some of these machine learning models with the new updated spreadsheets and give you all of that info. Looking forward to it. I will be putting out an e-guide. That's a shocker if you're here. Comment below that you made it this far and that you're excited for that ebook for the 2025 season. That is going to be my off-season project this season, as well as getting all of these machine learning models updated and running a lot of that stuff. Labor of love here. Anyway, have a good one, folks. Go out there, win some money. We'll see you next regular season and throughout the playoffs. Have a good one. Peace.